Hello everyone, this is Emily Greenblatt, and today I will be covering one of the most common struggles among all students with ADHD, executive functioning. Joining me today is our school psychologist here at JDHS, Miss Elaine Howe. So Miss Howe, starting off, can you tell us what is executive functioning?
So executive functioning, I like to think of it as the conductor for an orchestra because it manages the functions of the brain in terms of three essential components of working memory, activation, and then inhibition. So when we're thinking about ADHD, typically you think of having a short attention span. That's kind of the classic thing. Well, what does that impact? Well, it impacts what you can remember, because if you're not focusing, you're not remembering. It kind of slides off the Teflon pan. The other part is the activation. A lot of times with executive functioning, students struggle just to get started. So when you think of the orchestra, it's like the conductor's there and he's pointing to you. You're on, you're going to play now. So being able to get that together, to get going, to do and perform. And then the inhibition part is where you are kind of knowing when to speak, when to come into play, when to hold back. So think of that as your volume that the conductor is saying more and more and more, like louder, and then coming back. It also looks at, when you're thinking of your attention, how are you, when do you respond, when don't you respond, when do you hold back? So looking at those three components is looking at that executive functioning. And then the main thing that you also think of is planning and organizing and getting things done. So here at the high school, some students really struggle with that task completion, and they might complete the homework, but then they don't turn it in. So that also comes into play, as well as when you're thinking about larger projects and how to get started and stay on top of things. So all of those are required for an executive function.
And why do you think children with ADHD struggle with this set of skills?
Because it's hard when you have ADHD to concentrate and focus. So you need that in order to then know how to plan and organize. If you're not focusing and remembering, it impacts all of them. So I see executive functioning as kind of being farther down the line. So first you need to be able to attend, then you need to remember, and then you need to put it all together to get something done.
So you've seen a lot of ADHD students. What are some effective strategies for improving executive functioning skills for these students?
So there are a lot of things that you can do when you struggle with executive functioning. So one thing that I like is using a planner or a calendar. I think kids are tired of teachers saying, take out your planners, but it is the most effective way to stay on top of things. It also helps improve your ability to remember it because you're writing it down. So it's kind of a combo of using those planners as well as writing things down. And then there's some trace as to, well, what was that assignment? Yes, we use Google Classroom, but in life there are going to be things that you need to write down. So it's recorded somewhere, so you can go back and see, oh yes, I have that. I also like checklists because when you're thinking of any kind of task that you're trying to accomplish, being able to have a list of things and checking things off, it shows your progress. And I like visuals. I think visuals in general are a positive thing to use when you struggle with executive functioning. And it's also rewarding, so as you can see that you're making progress, whether you're doing a timeline and breaking things down, you're seeing that progress. Whether you're putting that down into segments on your Google Calendar and seeing that, that's another thing. And then at each of those points, when something is done, a small part of that, reward yourself, because then you're more likely to do this again. The other thing that is huge is routines. So once you have kind of trained yourself into a routine, it requires less thinking because it becomes automatic. So that's a key component for making any kind of life change, is getting it into your routine, whether it's taking your vitamins or brushing your teeth and remembering to floss, or even being organized in terms of that routine of, okay, I'm always going to put my car keys here. I'm going to put my student ID here, so that when I'm going out the door, I have it. I think of, your backpack, packing it the night before, and it's there by the door to go, so you're not running around, oh my gosh, where's my chemistry book? You already had it packed, and it's there and ready to go, and that's part of your routine. Setting up a time when you usually do your homework. So sometimes to start that routine, sometimes you have to start small. It might be for some kids who aren't doing any homework or anything, set an alarm. What's a good time to set that alarm? Well, maybe it's 7 o'clock because we've already eaten dinner. If I have an alarm that goes off, it might just remind me, oh, I should get out my backpack and I should look at my calendar and see what is due. So starting with those little things, those routines, and reward yourself. I'm big on rewards. Whether that's okay, I'm gonna get a snack, I'm gonna, do a 5-minute thing and chit chat with my friends, or check Snapchat or whatever it is you're using, just to kind of reward yourself, but then get back. Also I'm key on timers, like 20 minutes on, a couple minutes of reward to shift that focus, or doing something difficult to then doing something easy. So if it only takes you 10 minutes to get your math problems done, and you've been working hard at something, to then finish, do those 20 minutes, and then, oh, okay, I can knock out those math problems. That's an easy check, getting it done. So those are some positive things that you can do to help. Another one is, being able to verbalize, what is my goal? What do I want to accomplish? Whether you're talking to a friend, or if you're writing it down, so what is it that I want to accomplish, and what might be some stumbling blocks along the way? And just so you're kind of talking it through before you actually get started, it can also help. So those are some suggestions.
So now, before we wrap things up, you and I met back in October, and we talked a lot about different situations that students with ADHD have gone through, like having to stay after school to complete a project, because sometimes it takes these students a little bit longer and stuff like that. One thing you said, though, that really caught my attention, and this is a direct quote from October, was students with ADHD tend to get a lot of negative messages, such as try harder, focus, etc., which can wear someone down after a while, to the point where they don't feel like they're good enough. This stuck with me, I feel like, because it's such a great insight on how ADHD can affect an individual's self-esteem. And I wanted to bring this up because there are some connections between low self-esteem and executive functioning, and there have been some studies that have shown that people with lower self-esteem have struggle with executive functioning to a greater extent. So is there anything else that you can think of that may affect a student's executive functioning skills?
Yeah, I see that students who struggle with anxiety and depression also struggle with executive functioning, because memory is affected by those. When you're nervous about something, it's really hard to remember. Once again, it just doesn't seem to stick. You're going through the motions, but you're not remembering what it was that you read. And that happens whether you're anxious. It also happens sometimes when you're depressed, when you are just not able to get started or initiate. And that's some of that same executive function, where it just seems like you don't have the energy to just get out your backpack and go through those steps that you need to do. So I think that both of those things, the anxiety as well as the depression, also impact executive functioning, because it's that final step of putting it all together and getting things done.
Well, Mrs. Howe, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just that I am always here for students, whether they need someone to talk to vent, or they're concerned about someone else, then I'm here to help in any way that I can, whether they're anxious or depressed or concerned about a friend or struggling with executive functioning and want some ideas of what they can do differently. I'm here to help, as well as our counseling.